right, we're still here. We've learned about God's attributes through various stories. Him being creative, him being powerful, him wanting relationship with humans, humans basically throwing away that relationship and the consequences from that disobedience because they have free will and they exercise the free will in the wrong direction. We learn about humans choosing so much evil that God has to wipe out humanity to save the last remnant of goodness, to just wipe out that evilness through Noah. And then we read about, or we listen to, we went through the story of Abraham and learned about why God is choosing Abraham. What kind of qualities of a man that God really wants, right? The quality of generosity, the quality of selflessness, laying down his own life for the lives of other people. And God can work with that. Abraham isn't perfect, but we learn that God is more interested in belief than perfection. And so God counts the belief as righteousness, not the actual perfectness. And then we skip through Isaac and Jacob and get through to Moses, where Moses is called again by God to rescue the Israelites who have been suffering for 400 years as slaves down in Egypt. And God is going to rescue them, and he's going to rescue them through Moses and through the 10 plagues that we went through last week. And really about fighting over Pharaoh and Pharaoh's heart and his control over the nation of Egypt, and demonstrating that God, or Yahweh, is the one true God. And he's in control, and he's all powerful, and he can control everything, and all the natural disasters that people attribute to pagan or polytheistic gods. There is one true God, and he controls them all. And so that's really the point that he's trying to get across there. And so the Israelites are saved. They go out into the wilderness, and that's where we pick up the story, is the Israelites in the wilderness. So again, put on your thinking ears, your listening ears, and we'll go through it and do a recap afterwards.
Is this story not quite as long as the last one? Oh, gosh.
Not quite as long.
Ay, ay, ay.
God hears our prayers.
It wasn't long after the Israelites were freed from Egypt that they began complaining to Moses. Why did you make us leave Egypt? We had plenty to eat and drink there. Did you lead us into the wilderness to die? Moses cried out to God, what am I going to do with these people? They'll kill me. So each time the Israelites ran out of food or water, God provided for them through a miracle. He sent birds to their camp for them to eat. He covered the ground with the flaky bread-like miracle food, and he even made water pour out of a rock for them to drink multiple times. When it was hot, he covered them with a cloud by day, and when it was cold, he provided a pillar of fire by night. Their clothes miraculously grew with them. Their sandals never needed repairing. Their clothes never needed repairing. 2 months after leaving Egypt, the Israelites set up camp at the base of Mount Sinai. Moses climbed up the mountain to hear from God. God said, tell my people this. You saw how I carried you on eagle's wings and rescued you from Egypt. Now, if you obey me and keep my covenant, you will be my treasured people, a kingdom of priests set apart to represent me in the whole earth. When Moses came down the mountain, he told the people what God said. They all agreed. We will do everything that God asks us. Then God told Moses to have them gather at the base of the mountain so he could speak with them directly. As the people gathered, a powerful storm rolled in with lightning and thunder. Suddenly the mountain was on fire as God began speaking to them. Suddenly it wasn't just Moses that heard his voice. God spoke to them all. I am your God who rescued you from slavery in Egypt. Put me above everything else. Worship only me. Do not misuse or disrespect my name. Remember to set aside a day each week to rest and worship me. Honor your parents. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't sleep with anyone but your husband or wife. Be faithful. Don't lust after what others have. Be satisfied with what I give you. As God spoke, the people were deathly afraid of God and moved away from the mountain and told Moses, speak to us for God and we will listen, but don't let God speak to us directly or we will die. Moses told them, don't be afraid. God is showing you his overwhelming power. From now on, let your fear of him keep you from sinning. As the people pulled away from God, Moses climbed up into the cloud surrounding the mountain. He was there in the cloud on the mountain for 40 days, and it was during this time that God gave Moses more instructions to give to Israel. These became laws to govern their people, laws about how to treat neighbors and enemies, how to handle conflict, what is fair punishment, when to work and rest, when to celebrate and worship, and what offerings are acceptable to God. All right, review. What happened?
That was a nice length. Just gonna say.
Yeah, that was a good one.
My favorite was the very beginning
They just
when
come out the back complaining.
they're already complaining.
Come on, God.
It didn't take long, but they're already complaining. And that they wish that they would have been with the Egyptians
had
because they
food.
actually had food.
They had food.
Oh, how quickly they forgot what it was like there.
But I love how God still provides for their needs, and it even talks about the clothes that they were wearing, how the clothes, like the shoes were like constantly, wasn't renewed, but what was the word?
Growing with them?
Growing with them, yeah.
Which
so-
is a wild concept to have. Like, their clothes just kept growing as they got bigger and older. Like, what?
And
And he had water come out of rocks, so they would always have water.
it had been about 2 months, I think, at that point, and then they are, yeah, they all meet at the base of Mount Sinai.
Yep.
Moses goes up. God speaks to him. God tells him a set of 10 commandments, laws.
Before that, what does God want the people to be?
A kingdom of priests.
Priests.
To show the rest of the world what God is like,
Holy.
I think you said.
Yeah,
Set apart to represent
Holy.
me in the whole
Represent,
earth.
not show.
yeah.
Yep.
And then Moses went back to the base with all of the Israelites, and then God set the mountain on fire and spoke to them. And that was the first time that he had ever spoke directly to them, not just Moses,
And they were terrified. Yeah.
which would be
They've
quite
already seen a
terrifying.
lot of crazy miracles at this
Yeah.
point, by the way, but the fact that this one terrified them kind of speaks to how dramatic it must have been.
Well, I was.
An
I don't.
entire mountain
Well, they had a
being on
cloud
fire.
at the day
Yeah,
and a pillar
that
of
might
fire
get my
at night.
attention too.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I just thought of this, but they were sheltered in their land. I wonder if they actually saw any of the.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably heard about it and just like, what? Really? We had light here. Why? You guys had darkness? Like, I
You
don't.
guys had frogs?
You guys had frogs? I don't believe
Even
you.
if the fiery hail was not on you, you would think that you would still
Like
see
in the
it.
distance, like the
yeah.
thunder and lightning, and
Yeah.
maybe.
But when he was speaking to them, was that when he was saying, like, to honor your father and mother, to be faithful, just
To love God.
Don't want what your neighbor has, but be
Yeah.
happy with what you have.
and then
Yeah.
the Israelites were like, don't ever let him speak directly to us or we'll die, please.
Good paraphrase. We're terrified.
Yep. Yep.
And then Moses went up in a cloud for 40 days, right? And that was when God gave him more instructions.
In the mountain. He was still on the mountain, but
I
there was
don't know
a
why I thought it
cloud
was in
on
the
top of
cloud.
the mountain.
Oh, gotcha.
He went
He's not
into the
actually in
cloud, on the mountain, right?
I see.
He wasn't the cloud rider.
Because that would have been also really wild. And it ended there.
Yeah, and then God gave him laws.
So I feel like with God giving them the laws, he's kind of given them almost like the boundaries, like the lines, like here's what
Back to creation.
here's what I'm telling you guys to do.
More boundaries.
I'm going to make more boundaries, but almost like I'm going to make it so simple. Here are 10 things. Don't do these 10 things. If you could just follow within these parameters, you're going to have a good life.
So they don't ever need a question. They know the expectation now.
Don't complain.
I'm just going to throw this out there. If humanity couldn't follow the one rule at the beginning,
That's pretty true.
I don't know. I feel like you just set them up for.
What's 10 going to do?
Just make it 10 times worse. That's what it's going to do.
Yeah, I'm interested as to
9
why
more
God
things to
would
break.
bring back more boundaries again.
And those were the 10 big. We know it didn't say how many. We know them as 10 rules or commandments,
10
but there
commandments,
actually
yeah.
was way more than that because there was also. It ended with rules about how to treat each other and how to handle conflict and
When to rest.
yeah. So there's
Oh,
a
that was
lot
my
of
favorite one.
boundaries.
Yeah, you get a day to rest.
God bless.
Sign me
Except
up.
pastors.
Did
You
he
guys have to work 2 times
say
as hard.
in the story, like, what would happen if they didn't follow those rules?
Well, he says that he will basically excommunicate the whole nation, right? We
Oh.
just like
So, yeah.
Good question,
He will
Rachel.
Okay.
I
send
feel like
me-
that was an important piece of information that I.
He doesn't say it in the story, but yes.
Okay.
But there are consequences that are
I
actually laid
think
out.
another attribute, though, I learned about God is God really favors these people. Like, God shows them favor, and God shows humanity favor. And I've heard this phrase all the time, favor ain't fair. But, I mean, like, I think God is showing everyone favor right now in the story.
Okay, what was the line that you read about if you will, it was an if then, if you will do what I say, I will make you a nation of priests, or what? It was right around that line somewhere.
Now, if you obey me
If you
and
obey
keep
me.
my covenant,
Okay.
you will be my treasured people,
Treasured people. Ooh.
a kingdom of priests,
Okay.
set
Treasured.
apart
If you
to
obey
represent
me.
me.
Ooh.
And the
That's
whole earth.
heavy right there.
Lots of that is heavy. So there is expectations, right? And there's benefits to being in covenant with God.
God's a promise keeper. He's offering them some promises here. And if you do this, then
Why
You will
did
see
he
this.
choose those things? Like, what? Why? That's what I was wondering.
The
like,
10 things?
The day of, yeah.
Or
Maybe I'm
Yeah,
reading
why
too
did he
much
choose
into
those
that,
10 things?
But,
Yeah,
but
why?
why though?
why those 10?
Why even make more rules?
I think if that's the rule that God wanted, I mean, maybe he just didn't want, because if you look at, if we go back from a couple episodes, God was getting so upset with the sin of humanity that these things like, hey, don't want what your neighbor has.
yeah.
Hey, don't sleep with your friend's wife. Like those kind of things, like God is like setting these boundaries on these people
Yeah.
because I think those things upset him. That's what we've seen.
And it would probably cause more destruction with people.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned in youth ministry that you've probably learned, Tony, and Mark has probably learned as a parent, and Rachel as a teacher, you only make rules because someone broke them. Right?
actually
It's not a
super
rule until somebody does it
not a
wrong.
policy
and then you're
until
like, well,
someone-
now that
Okay,
has to
that's
be
a
a rule.
thing now.
Don't drive with a youth student in your trunk of your car. Wonder why that rule is there, because somebody did that. Not saying that ever happened here, but
No, never.
so I kind of wonder if like you must love no other God
That's-
than me
yeah.
is because that rule has been broken. You must treat your parents with honor because parents, you should not murder because there's been murder. So this is reestablishing, these aren't new things, it's just reestablishing the things that should have already been respected, but somebody blew it.
So he has to
Youth
to
ministry
spell it
101.
out more.
Yeah, I feel like this is humanity's 2.0, right? Like we're after the flood.
Or 3.0.
3.0. We're post the flood now. I feel like God's now saying like, okay, guys, here it is. Don't mess this up.
Once again.
Yeah, but once again,
And also, this is on my heart only because this is what I was studying in the past week in my own personal Bible time. But like, if I take everything away, they've had everything taken from them, bad and good. They live in a desert with one set of clothing and shoes that grow with them and don't wear out. They don't get to change their outfit. They don't have any luxuries. If I take it all away, can you just follow these basic life principles? And I'm not mocking them because I think we would struggle as much or more, but it's just, I'm going to take away all the distractions. Just this is what I want.
Well, remember, what culture were they in for the last 400 years?
Egyptian.
Right. It wasn't an Israelite culture.
No.
They didn't have any of these things for 400 years.
True.
And so maybe God is saying, all right, these are some of the things that the Egyptians have done, and you think that it's normal? I'm saying it's not normal. These are not good things for you to be doing. Our culture is going to be a different culture, right? He wants to set them apart to represent me.
that's really good.
Am I allowed to say
Anything.
that humans are complainers? I'd like to add that to our attributes.
For sure. For sure, yeah.
Unappreciated.
Can I add that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's honestly kind of a strong statement to say why did we leave Egypt? You mean you'd rather be a slave, or yeah, maybe you had a home and land and whatnot, but you were a slave at the end of the day, no matter what. Like you did not have freedom. Why would you want that? Why would you want to go back to that?
Yeah.
Because sometimes your stomach is really, really powerful in your motivation.
True. That is true.
All right, what does the story reveal about God?
He's so patient.
Yeah.
the fact that they immediately started complaining after they saw no judgment in this statement, because I'm pretty sure I would not do it even close to as good as they did it, but they're already complaining, and they just saw him do miracle after miracle after miracle. He shows up every day in fire and clouds, and yes, also kind of nervy to complain to that God.
True.
Isn't there, you said something about fear. They had a fear of God. I can't remember what that line was.
Well,
but-
after the mountain,
Yeah.
yeah. They feared God, and Moses said, God is showing you his overwhelming power. From now on, let your fear of him keep you from sinning. So they didn't fear.
It's a bit of foreshadowing right there.
So he's patient. Anything else? Does he ignore them? Let them just off into the wilderness?
I know we already wrote caring. I think he cares. He's showing them how much he cares. He's saying, here, I want to give you some boundaries and some lines. I love you. This is why. Kind of like we had talked about, I forgot what episode it was, is like sometimes like punishment isn't just to like, you messed up, but like it's out of a place of love. And yeah, I think maybe God loved, he loved humanity so much. He already promised with the rainbow that he ain't going to wipe us out again like that. But I think he loves humanity so much that he probably just didn't want to see it go down the hill again.
I'm thinking also that that statement is still true that we have up there, that he wants to partner with humans. He says,
Yeah.
if you obey me, I will treasure you and you will represent me to the world.
Yep.
Values
he does
obedience,
value
that's for
obedience.
sure.
But he also doesn't just save them from Egypt and then, all right, off you go, right? He leads them, physically leads them for the next 40 years.
And he's teaching them.
Yeah, I
don't
was
think
gonna
we've
say
said that yet.
That's kind of what I was gonna say, is that he is a teacher. I think he
Yeah.
wants them to be better.
Sure.
And
yeah.
he's a guide because they don't know where to go unless he shows them.
He's a teacher and a guide. I don't know if we wrote this one down either, but he's also a provider.
Right.
He's providing them
Yeah, they won't
clothing,
survive unless
water,
he provides.
food. Yeah.
Oh, provider's up there. I see it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it. Okay.
But he doesn't only provide for their physical needs, right? He's also the source of their morality, their
Totally.
what is right and what is righteous. God defines that.
Yeah.
What do you think God is wanting from the people when he tells them he wants to make them a kingdom of priests?
I think he wants them to be different than the rest of the world.
Why?
I think they're in some way supposed to represent God to the world, and the world doesn't know what God is like unless they represent him well.
Yeah. They're treasured.
Why does the world need to know?
I think he loves the world. I think he loves all people. I think he wants to partner with humans, not just a select group of humans. But the humans have to be willing.
Yeah, he needs certain humans. There's only so much, this sounds dumb to say, but there's only so much God can do, clearly, which, like, is a weird way, without, like, just killing off a bunch of people or doing these destructive things. Like, if he actually wants people to choose him, he needs leaders of people to, like, bring people to him.
There's only so much he can do before he's forcing relationship.
Yes, that's a better way to say that.
So there's some groundwork being laid here on what God wants for the ultimate redemption of humanity, right? The ultimate relationship with humanity. It's not just with the Israelites.
Have we talked about redemption at all, or what that word even means? Or I think that's a pretty big concept that I don't know if we've really broached yet, but it kind of lives in this land of assuming that the world is broken, which I think we've proven a few times over.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about not redemption maybe specifically, but that there was this future call when Adam and Eve broke their their commitment. And God says, all right, well, there's this future seed of Eve who will break or destroy the seed of the snake, right? And so
there's a plan.
there's some kind of long-term plan going on here. And this, I think, is another glimpse of that long-term plan where the plan isn't just for the Israelites, right? God really cares about all of humanity. He wants to show himself to all of humanity, and he's choosing, partnering with humans, partnering with this nation to show all of humanity who God is, so that everybody can have the right way of living and the right relationship and all that stuff.
Do you feel like the average person, if they read this part of the Bible, this Old Testament section of the Bible, that they think, wow, that's a lot of weird and a lot of out there expectations that God has of people, but we miss why those expectations are there, or guardrails, or...
I would say that, and I think like if you come from like if you're an agnostic or an atheist, without knowing the context of what's happened thus far, you would think, yeah, why would God put up these types of laws? Because why would he put up these types of laws if he just knows that they're going to break them again? I think that's a question I always get asked by a lot of my friends is, why would God give you laws if he knows you're just going to keep breaking them?
I also think something that I hear from people a lot of the time that aren't Christians is Christianity is just a bunch of rules that you have to follow. Which, like, if you don't know the backstory or the reason behind it or anything else, it does. I mean, essentially, that's what God gave them, was a bunch of rules to follow. But obviously, there was reason.
So what's the answer? Is they're asking that question, right?
I think I have no biblical knowledge or concept of what happens in the near future, but I think I almost feel like, not that he like set them up, but like there has to be another way. Like, man obviously cannot. We learn that we're killing our siblings, we're doing all these awful things, we're slaves, we're like, what more can humanity do at this point? God has to intervene somehow. God has to do something so big that it just shows humanity on its own cannot.
I don't think we're quite there yet. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we're not there yet, but I think there's a little bit more basic to it. Like, we can bring in a metaphor of a parent and child, right? Yeah. I can set rules in front of my child and for my child and my barriers for that child, and I know that that child is going to fail, but there's going to be consequences, and eventually that child will learn why we have those limits, why we have those barriers, right? And so it goes back to God being the source of righteousness and the measuring stick, and it goes, all right, here's the ruler, guys, right? This is perfection. This is really what I demand. But the other half was, hey, there's going to be ways for you to get back into right relationship by these things that I'm going to show you how to do in the temple and whatnot. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to throw away the rules and just everybody can do everything, right? We still need that rule stick that says, hey, this is what we're striving for. This is the goal.
Otherwise, you have no morality, and there is no...
We have to define morality.
Right.
Yeah.
And God is that definer.
Again, as a parent, you wouldn't look at, I mean, all your children are different, but you don't look at one child and go, man, that kid really struggles with the rules, so I'm just not going to have any rules for that kid so that they don't fail. You instead, you have to really enforce the rules in order for them to have the potential to yield to them for their own safety. And I think that's something we haven't broached yet either. Are the rules or guidelines or laws, are they unreasonable or ridiculous? And maybe that's not the right way to ask that question, but if I think of it in a parenting context, when I tell my children not to run into a busy road, that's not an unreasonable thing. I'm doing that for their own safety and protection. So could it be that the guidelines that God is giving his kids is for their own good?
That's what I was going to say. Is God protecting them ultimately?
Yes.
I mean, there's 10
Yeah.
commandments. I don't think anybody can argue that any one of those 10 commandments is bad or not even applicable to
Yeah. Like,
even
hey,
in our
you
modern
won't have to-
society.
You won't have to go through the pain of experiencing, whatever, murder or like losing someone if you don't murder someone. Like you don't need to, you don't have to experience the pain of your spouse cheating on you if you don't cheat on your spouse. Like, it's just, yeah.
Do we already have protector up there?
I think we do.
I don't think so.
I don't see
Wow.
it, but I definitely
Yeah.
think he's trying to protect us.
How so?
Because yeah.
Well, just what Tony was just saying, like he's trying to protect us from potential pain. If we don't have any rules, we're just going to cause ourselves pain and other people pain because these people still had emotions and feelings. And I mean, maybe if there was no rules, if I was married and my husband cheated on me, it would just be normal. But I still feel like as a human being, that would suck and would hurt. And if somebody you loved, a family member, got murdered, even if it was a more normalized thing, I still think that that would be painful and would hurt. So I think he's trying to protect people from that pain.
In both of those, and in a lot of these, they're the baseline is relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't break the relationship with your neighbor. Don't break the relationship with your wife. Don't break the relationship
That's a
with me.
great point.
With all these different things, right? Lots of relationship is very important. Okay, one last question. Hopefully it's quick. Why do you think God called the people to the mountain to speak with them?
Why was he wanting to speak with them, or why that location?
Of all the things, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, why not like a large valley where they can all see?
yeah, why a mountain? Why this particular mountain? Why this showcase of fire and lightning and storm on this mountain?
I think the question maybe isn't necessarily a geographical thing, but God wanted to meet with Moses. And it seems like, yes, he met with the people, but like Moses had to go to him, had to meet with him. Was it more so like a journey to get Moses to him or to speak to him? Yeah.
I got nothing. Pass.
Yeah, the story isn't very specific. Go, do you have a guess?
Oh, absolutely not. I was just going to say mountains are, in my opinion, like the most beautiful
Yeah?
creation that I've seen
Yeah.
that God has created.
Yeah.
And so God brought them to like this incredible thing that he created. That was just the road I was going to go down.
Pure
but that's
speculation.
My opinion. That's my opinion, yeah.
My pure speculation, the only thing I can think of is they came from a polytheistic world where the gods are put in the high places, and this is the highest place around. So this god is in the
Dang.
highest place they can see for miles around.
That's good too. That's better.
Their expectation is that God is going to be on a mountain, right? And so he brings them to the mountain to meet those expectations and shows them, hey, this is me.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And like, just try to imagine seeing a mountain on fire. Like, those things are giant. Like, that would be a little bit frightening.
Yeah. All right, that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. More brain-bending stuff. Again, read through the story of Exodus and the Israelites wandering, going to the mountain, meeting God. What does that mean? Wrestle with the hard questions there. Find the problems in the story, the things that just kind of sound weird to our modern ears, and dig into them, why those things are said. What does it say about God? If you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them on the video. We'd appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.